morning, everyone. We're just going to give it a second or two to get everyone into our room this morning for our program. We'll get started now. So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the HIA for our tradable sectors and how they impact the Long Island economy. My name is Tony Joy. I'm the office manager with the HIA-LI. We'd like to acknowledge a few people this morning, as well as our sponsors, before we get started with the program. So again, we first would like to thank all of our board of directors for their continuous dedication and all the work that they do to help us move our initiatives forward on a daily basis. We do have in front of you a screen of our board of directors, and again, we just want to thank them for their continued support in putting together and helping us put together programs and things like that, as well as just want to thank those who are joining us today that are board members. And then we have also would like to thank our sponsors for today's program. We have Dime Community Bank, People's Alliance Federal Credit Union, Campolo, Middleton, and McCormick, Carol Fritz, Sandler Training, Saserath, and Zorian, Suffolk County IDA, and TriTech. Again, their help and support in putting on these programs is really vital and helping us give this type of information, educational information to the Long Island business community. So we just want to thank you again to all of our sponsors for their support. And at this time, I'd like to pass it over to Terry Lisi Maselli, President and CEO of the HIA-LI.
Thanks, Ariana. And good morning again, everyone, and welcome. So many of you know it was about actually 4 years ago that we ventured into a partnership, a collaborative effort with the Suffolk Industrial Development Agency and the Regional Planning Association and the Long Island Regional Planning Council and many, many more to look at an economic impact study, look at an opportunity analysis to really identify the economic impact that the Long Island Innovation Park at HIA-LI has on the region, the state, certainly on Long Island. So many of you have heard the statistics already, or at least some of them. They are astounding: 55,000 employees, 1,300 companies, 14 billion in economic output given back to the region. And one of the other things that came out of it is looking at tradable sectors. And tradable sectors are sectors that we'll talk about this morning. Obviously, our panelists are representing some of them that are either exporting and or taking money and bringing it back into Long Island, into the region. And they found that 58% of the industries in the park were coming from tradable sectors. By the way, well over 20% more than the United States and 30% more than overall on Long Island. So it was deemed, and it is deemed, the hub for economic growth. And that's one of the reasons why we're here this morning. I want to thank Joe Campolo and his Long Island Innovation Park at HIA-LI Task Force, who have worked diligently, not only the last 4 years, but very specifically through this pandemic, to really create movement and get some amazing, amazing things accomplished. You'll hear more about them when he talks about them. So I'm going to turn it over to him right now. And we're delighted to have this panel with us to find out more about these tradable sectors. Joe?
Great, thanks, Terry. And thanks everyone for joining us. And you know, the convenience of Zoom is outweighed by the fact that I have to look at my face all the time. I mean, I used to think that I couldn't stand hearing myself talk. Now I have to not stand hearing myself talk and looking at myself. So, but here we are. I look forward to doing these in person, hopefully soon. You know, on behalf of HIA-LI, Terry, I want to thank our great panel, my fellow board member, Ann Shabunkel-Moore, who's the CEO and owner of GSC Dynamics, some manufacturing aerospace in the park, Matt Brown, who's the Vice President of Network Solutions and Technology. John Finn, who's the Director of Leasing and Acquisitions at Damianos Realty Group, good friend of the HIA. Devin Kulka, CEO of the Kulka Group, my good friend. And see, if I had a handsome face like you, Devin, I wouldn't mind looking at it all the time, but I don't. And Mark Blitzstein, the President of American Diagnostics Manufacturing here in the park. So we're going to talk about tradable sectors, and as Terry mentioned, I'm just going to give sort of a 5-minute overview because in the last couple of years I've learned more about tradable sectors than I ever thought I would. We undertook a few years ago an economic impact study to see what would be the economic impact of the businesses coming out of the park. And we collaborated with Stony Brook MBA students, and we learned a lot of data. And thankfully and gratefully, the Suffolk County IDA funded an opportunity analysis based on that, because the economic output was so staggering, numbers-wise. But numbers are only one part of the story. It's who's creating the dollars, and where are those dollars being spent, and what are the opportunities based on that economic output. So they did an opportunity analysis, and honestly, we held our breath because we weren't really sure what it was going to tell us. But as Terry said, the results were actually very staggering. What we found and what we were introduced to was this concept of tradable sectors and tradable businesses, and why they're so important and what makes it so critical to have these tradable industries is it's new dollars coming into a region, and products and services being sold outside of the region as well. So if you think about what a non-tradable industry would be, think about a 7-Eleven, right? You get your paycheck, you cash your paycheck, you go to 7-Eleven, you buy some stuff. You're circulating those dollars inside the community, and those dollars aren't going to grow. Those dollars aren't necessarily going to grow unless the cost of goods and services within that community go up. And what that does is creates a very high tax burden as well, because the dollars that are circulating in a non-tradable sector community are dollars tied to services that municipalities have to provide, school districts, snow removal, trash, all that sort of stuff. And it makes sense. So when we look at sort of the opportunity analysis findings, it makes sense, right? Tradable industries make up only 23% of Nassau and Suffolk's economy. So the good, healthy industries that are bringing fresh dollars into Long Island only make up 23% of our economy, which means 77% are those non-tradable industries, which explains why our tax base is so high here on Long Island, because our tradable industry ratio is so low. You look at the national average is 36% for economic hubs. But what we found on Long Island when we did the opportunity analysis is in those businesses, the almost 1,400 businesses that are in the park, 58% of them are in tradable sectors. So 58% of them are bringing new dollars into the region, and or exporting goods out and services outside of the region, which is incredibly healthy. If we didn't have this park, and why it's been deemed the economic engine here on Long Island, if we didn't have this park, just simple math, take the 58% out, that 23% would be even lower on Long Island, much lower on Long Island, and we would have a much higher tax base here on Long Island. So it's really garnered the interest of all the local elected officials, as well as the state. The Lieutenant Governor is spending an awful lot of time at HIA-LI and engaged within the Innovation Park, because that 58% number is something that we can't afford to lose here on Long Island or here in the state. We go to the next slide, please. You can go to the next slide. Next one, please. So we talked about all this. So you see here just in a visual, right? The right-hand side of the tradable sectors, we've more than doubled in the park. The businesses in the park have more than doubled Long Island's tradable sectors, and more than a third on top of the national outcome. Now, we are the second largest industrial park, second only to Silicon Valley. And this has gotten us national exposure and access to a lot of grants, which Terry's been doing a very effective job at getting us. The Long Island Regional Planning Council has deemed us, a project of regional significance, and that entitles us to get some grants as well to look at the park. If you go to the next slide, please. And the next one, the map. Where is the map? Next. There's the map. So I love this, right? I love this. Here on Long Island, we've always talked about how we have this spine of innovation that starts out east at BNL and goes to Stony Brook University, at the Cold Spring Harbor Lab. And think about it. We have, Brookhaven National Lab, and they just got awarded a almost $2 billion electron ion collider project here on Long Island, which is amazing. It's going to be the only electron ion collider in the world, and we were able to land that here on Long Island, which is incredibly exciting. And Cold Spring Harbor Lab has all of this great innovation and Nobel Prize laureates doing their research there, and Stony Brook, right in the middle of it, growing by leaps and bounds. But right in the center of it all is us, right? The Hauppauge Industrial Association of Long Island and the Long Island Innovation Park at Hauppauge. And why that's critical is, especially with the companies represented here on the panels and the other tradable sectors, is we're producing all of this great talent, we're producing all of this great research, but we want to retain it here on Long Island. We want to retain it and make sure that they have jobs. And the more we grow the quality of the businesses here on Long Island, which is stemming right there in the innovation park, the better the chance we have at retaining the quality that's coming out of our universities. So we've undertaken major initiatives, not just with Stony Brook, but they happen to be in the center there, and started a major move in technology and research here on the island. But with all the universities, and particularly the community colleges, which are incredibly important to the manufacturing communities, as well as the high schools. So we have an initiative at HIA-LI where we're reaching out to all the educational institutions to start to be able to find talent here in the innovation park. And so that really, and you can take the presentation down. That's great. And if I could just ask the panelists to just mute out if you're not talking. There's just some background feedback there. That sort of sets the stage for the discussion that we're going to have today, and really talk about the importance of making sure these industries not only survive through COVID, but thrive post, because our economy is so critically important on it. So what I want to do is just start, and we'll go through and give you guys 2 minutes or so to introduce yourself, to talk a little bit about your company, and to talk about how you have been managing at this point through COVID. I can't believe it's a year that the word COVID-19 has surfaced into our vocabularies, but yet here we are. And so I think we'd like to talk a little bit about how you've gotten through this past year. So Ann, I'll start with you, and then we'll go to Matt after Ann.
Okay, thank you, Joe, and thank you everyone, and to the panel of folks that I'm sharing this morning. So interesting, I actually feel like I'm representing two different things here as far as GSE dynamics and the aerospace industry discussion through COVID has been unique. And I think you've probably heard me say these comments before, Joe. What it means to be essential became an important topic through COVID. And then the sort of the emotional and psychological aspect of what it meant to be an essential employee, not frontline healthcare, but yet still essential in that we had to go to work every day and still do what we had to do every day as a team. The other aspect, of course, for the CEO is having to understand and communicate to every single employee that their personal life and what they do when they're outside the building is almost more important to not bring, obviously, COVID into the walls of GSE and our buildings. So again, communication became vital, and I'm sure that you and I are going to talk more about that with the rest as we move on, but I can't say it enough. The trust and communication and the fact that we had to keep everybody safe was so critical in understanding what it meant to be essential. And then the broader picture, which I know, again, we'll touch on, I founded Ignite Long Island, which represents all of manufacturers on Long Island. And it was amazing to have that reinforcement of how strong manufacturing is on Long Island and how New York manufacturers really stepped up, were willing to retool and do anything they could to make the products that New Yorkers needed. So again, I look forward to talking more about that as we continue on the discussion.
Great, thanks, Ann. Matt, so technology must be booming. So talk about your experiences over this year.
Great, thanks, Joe. Yeah, Matt Brown from NST. Again, thank you for the panel, and HIA and Joe for putting this on this morning. We are a technology service provider here on Long Island, just about 75 people here. You know, the good thing about technology, and we all have adopted it from COVID, right? So that everybody's working from home. You know, the dynamic has shifted a little bit. But the good thing about it is we were prepared for that. We had, you know, employees working from home already. We had customers with employees working from home. So for the most part, we were pretty well planned out when the pandemic hit. I do think that Ann hit a really couple of great points, because we are essential as well. And the communication internally was really, really important. We also had to make sure that all of our employees were being safe, and, you know, what they were doing outside of work. Because again, since we're being essential, we are walking into our client's environment, and we wanted to make sure that not only are our employees safe, but we're also keeping their environment as safe as well. So we had put a bunch of different processes and procedures in place to make sure that we were ensuring that all of our employees were being safe, whether inside the office or outside the office. And I think that's a big part. The trust that Ann put out is another big part, that we are trusting everybody to remain safe and to keep safe. And I think for the time being, we're going to continue to do that until hopefully this pandemic ends soon.
Hey, Matt, just a quick question though. Did you find that most businesses that you were servicing were already set up to seamlessly work from home, or was there a lot of setup time that went into businesses when COVID hit?
I think it was 50-50, Joe. I think some definitely were, right? Because they had employees that wanted to work from home at nights and weekends. But then there were employees that were not, and they had to scramble a little bit to get set up. The majority of our clients are already cloud-based, so they're either fully cloud or some sort of hybrid cloud. So for the most part, it just became a shift from working within the office to working from home.
Yeah, I guess we're in a much better position now, should lockdown as an economy as a whole, right? Because of it.
Yeah, I think totally different. Yep.
Yep. So John, the director of leasing during a pandemic and acquisitions, how has your year been? It must have been very interesting, huh?
Yeah, to say the least. The good news, Joe, is that, you know, going into this pandemic, I think the real estate market was in full stride. We own and operate and control 33 properties just in Suffolk County now. We sold our only Nassau County asset about 3 years ago. So you know, going into this pandemic, you know, we were in all of our different sectors, whether it's medical, retail, and corporate office. You know, we're happy to be a participant in the Hauppauge marketplace with our acquisition of 100 Motor Parkway, which we spent some significant capital to renovate the building from top to bottom, even though it wasn't really that old, but we wanted to freshen up and make it the best corporate environment to attract these you know, quality jobs that want to have a quality office and close to home. But when the pandemic hit, we had to become a quick study on try to create an environment. Although, you know, from an office perspective, we're not so much essential, but we deal with essential facilities. So de facto, we became essential because we had to monitor and maintain and operate facilities where you had to give people a level of comfort that we were doing everything that we could do from a facility standpoint with filtration devices, with sanitary, with increasing cleaning in high touch areas. And so, with the healthcare community, people still get sick and people still need to have medical care. And that's a crucial point. The retail sector, we saw a lot of people as a result of trying to just make ends meet during this shutdown, if you would. But some of our grocery store tenants were very active and very busy. Our restaurant tenants, albeit not sit down, but they had to reinvent themselves from a to-go standpoint. Our operation, we had to get, we're more of a hands-on, more collaborative function, but we too had to get VPNs for everybody, laptops for everybody, and have it with that contingency plan that everybody could be remote. And as too is our corporate tenants. The good news is going into this, we have a 96% occupancy in our portfolio, but our corporate tenants, with whether it be from just the unknown and the safety environment, but also the liability. So a lot of corporations have said, let's just, they wrote off 2020 and they said, we're just going to work from home. And now we haven't seen that on the corporate side where we see that reintroduction into the work environment. So we're hopeful that with vaccine and with people having a better level of comfort, now with COVID, the therapeutics that are out there, so we're going to start seeing more people coming back to the corporate work environment, because that's something that's a big factor right now, as the pandemic has caused a lot of businesses to shift focus on how they actually do business.
Yeah, I think it taught us how important our relationships and partnerships are between landlords and tenants, right?
Mm-hmm.
It took a lot of really good partnerships to help companies get through this, and you guys did an incredible job and have a great reputation for your partnership and support of your tenants. So we thank you. I don't think people realize how important that is to help keep businesses alive and afloat during this time.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for that.
Yep.
Devin Kolka, how is the
Thank you, guys.
construction industry faring during this time?
So I feel like the construction industry has really perceived to an extent through this. I think that a pandemic and a crisis like we have had has been, a catalyst for change. And in municipalities that used to go up against development and economic development, we now see townships adopting more development-friendly zoning codes, and Smithtown was at the forefront of that, and it continues to be at the forefront of that with putting together master plans for St. James, Kings Park, Smithtown. You have Brookhaven, looking at possibly doing a floating zoning for retail distressed properties. So I think, the change is a good thing in that front. I also think that it's the catalyst for other change in means and methods. I think people are going to be doing more industrialized construction solutions, building prefabricated parts of buildings in industrial buildings, shipping it out to the site and just plugging and play. It's a market segment that has been growing prior to the pandemic, but since the pandemic has happened, it's growing even more so because you can control safety better in a factory, and you can control waste better in a factory. And so as awful as the pandemic has been, and there's no doubt that it's been horrible, there has been some change that is a silver lining in this whole thing.
Question. So Long Island is notoriously slow in terms of getting approvals for construction projects to move forward. Was there any innovation used by the municipalities to help you guys get things across the finish line during this, or is everything just sort of pent up at this point?
there absolutely has been some innovation and some townships that are going to approval applications digitally, which we need to be doing that. There's no reason that in 2021 you have to get a stack of paper and submit your application. I think that was the first thing that people really paid attention to, and there's been multiple townships that have adopted it, but they were reaching out to us saying, what can we do to help? You know, we want to push projects forward, and it's nice to see that when a lot of times there was a lot of pushback in the past.
Yeah, good. Definitely some positives that have come out of COVID, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about in a little bit as a group, are the positives. But Mark, first of all, thanks for joining us, and tell us about American Diagnostic and your journey over the past year.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, HIA and my fellow panelists. My name is Mark Blitzstein, and I'm president of American Diagnostic. We're a manufacturer of frontline core diagnostic instruments, have about 120 employees on Long Island, about 200 worldwide. Our products, while not as crazy as the PPE products that have made the headline news, we're very close behind that in terms of demand. So 2020 turned out to be probably the most challenging year in our history. We faced early on incredible supply constraints because a lot of our sourcing is from China. It's almost all global. And at the same time, we experienced an explosion in demand that in some product categories exceeded 1,000% over historical numbers, all while trying to keep everybody safe. And it was a difficult juggling act to manage. We were a little bit lucky, well, a lot lucky, because we could have been in the hospitality sector, so we're a lot luckier than that field. But we were a little lucky in that because we sourced from Asia, we had insights into the pandemic a little earlier than most, and set up a task force in February before it really was thought to be a problem here, to kind of figure out best practices if the pandemic should hit. We didn't think it would to the extent it did. I don't know that anybody got that forecast right, but we put in practice a lot of things that allowed us to keep on operating and kept our employees safe. We have a set aside for the developmentally disabled, and we also employ a lot of seniors who do a lot of the hand assembly that is done in our facility. And we felt that they were the most vulnerable. So we asked about 25 of our employees to take unlimited paid leave during the worst parts of the pandemic. So from about the latter part of March till mid-June, all of those employees were put on unlimited paid leave to keep them home and safe. We then tried to hire temps, which was harder to do because of the federal government's bonus unemployment payments made it very hard to find people to fill those gaps, but we were able to manage mostly with a lot of overtime. And we ran out of inventory in April anyway because of supply constraints. So we didn't have as much to do for about a month or so while we waited for China to ramp back up and get us the components and products we needed. But it's finally starting to settle down a little bit. The demand curve is flattened, and we do see light at the end of the tunnel now.
Great. So how, when the tariffs were imposed with China, how did that impact your guys' supply chain there?
Well, we had a double whammy. So although most of our product escaped the tariff, the two products most impacted by the pandemic did not. Thermometry and pulse oximetry, the two hottest diagnostic tools for the pandemic, were hit with 25% tariffs. And we had to pay huge sums on now a 5, 10, 100-fold increase in volume, combined with air freight that was 9 times higher than the pre-pandemic levels to get product in. Fortunately, the feds, because we all petitioned them, made the right move and ultimately exempted that product temporarily. The tariffs were set to snap back January 1st. We got another reprieve till March 31st. We're still not sure at this point what the Biden administration is going to do. We are expecting the worst. We have to plan that way, but we've built up a pretty good reserve of inventory. So even if we have to eventually pass on tariffs, we have some wiggle room for a while.
No. So let's talk a little bit about leadership. So you guys are all in tradable sectors, but the reason Terry asked you to be on this panel is because you and your businesses are noteworthy leaders that are helping lead Long Island's economy forward through this all. But I'm curious, and Ann, I'll start with you, and I want to hear from all of you. We'll go around the horn again. I'm curious as to how your personal leadership needed to change during this time, how your business changed, and how your industry sort of changed, and how you led everybody through that during these past times.
Sure, Joe. Again, so aerospace and defense is the specific industry that I represent, and I won't be redundant in talking about communication through the era as it continues to be. But I think what's more critical as an industry, again, aerospace and defense is unique in that we compete with one another, but we're also working towards a common good, which is obviously protecting the U.S. and making the structures and everything the military needs. So again, COVID, brought up a unique opportunity for all of us to go over the best practices and make sure that production lines were continuing and that we were still able to ship the products that the U.S. military needs. So I think it really, as an entire industry, making sure that the leadership from top down, that there is consistent messaging. I know I reached out to HIA as well as the Aerospace Industries Association when, again, these terms kept popping up that we needed to define clearly. And when Cuomo, I'll never forget the day that he started those daily talks and this news was going out about who was essential, who was non-essential, who had to stay home, who had mandatory, quarantine. And the news was coming so fast and furious that it was difficult at times to make sure that the messaging was clear, accurate, and that the employees were hearing the right messaging and the correct messaging. So again, this was not done in a bubble. This was not done in the GSE walls only. It really forced my leadership to go outside the building and make sure that we were, again, getting top down. And I mean, really top down, right? From the Pentagon is where these messages were coming down from. And we had to make sure that federal and state rules and regulations that we're putting in place were, again, consistent. So as far as leadership, it was critical. And again, a testament to New York and Long Island. Our aerospace and defense sector is so strong. So strong with strong leaders. Obviously, the rich history in aerospace and defense. And we really did. We band together. We were calling each other constantly to check on each other from a health perspective, as well as to ensure we're doing the best practices. So again, leadership was critical, but not singularly. It took a team.
And how do you think your industry has been changed by this, or hasn't it?
Again, aerospace and defense has been so unique through this. So for each aerospace and defense company, you have to look at whether they are on commercial versus defense. Okay, so obviously anyone in the commercial area did not do well.
Right.
The commercial market for obvious reasons. So if you were able to be resilient and such and have enough in the defense market, right, you were able to continue. But then there was also within defense, are you doing new platforms and new programs for the primes, or are you doing spares? So I think fortunately for Long Island, we do a lot of spares here, right, for the military. So we were able to really continue working. And I know I'm not alone in saying some of us actually hired during COVID because the pool of candidates, right, for what it's worth, we were able to actually grow in certain areas of aerospace and defense on Long Island. So very, very unique trends. I kind of look forward to looking at the metrics. I'm kind of a metric geek. I like to look at what the stats look like. And I'm sure it will be unique for A&D, for aerospace and defense through COVID. Because again, we were able to thrive.
Yeah, it always hurts my heart, and I don't think people realize it when you see commercial air travel so down.
Yeah.
As to how many small manufacturing businesses and other businesses support that industry, and it does hurt my heart to see that one.
Yeah, well, and to help your heart, you should know that again, the supply chain is so close and so intimate, really, in this industry that we're in. That the flip side of that negative that you're speaking about is that it opened up capacity. So a lot of us who were struggling to find supply chain, partners to certain capabilities, it opened up a whole new vendor base of those that were used to do commercial, but now are able to do defense. So again, the flip side of that is that, we have new vendors now who were so heavily commercial, but open their doors now with their capacity for defense, which strengthens that. So, we try and look at the good that can come from the bad.
Yeah, I guess that's the human spirit, is
Yeah.
always able to
Yeah.
adapt. I love it. Matt, so Ann touched on the the daily briefings. None of us lived through the stock market crash of 1929 and the panic that ensued, but we did live through the PPP critical vendor panic. This is the best way that I know how to describe it. The business community was in a panic, and I'm sure that put a lot of pressure on NST and clients and customers wanting to get up and running. So talk about how you guys managed to get through all of that and do so well through it.
So, Joe, NST has been around for 20 years. And the funny thing about it is that the two founding partners, Will Collins and I, have known each other for 40 years. We actually met in kindergarten. So we do consider NST a family-run business. So this past year, the leadership has definitely been challenged with a couple of things. So the first point I'll make is that internally, we didn't make sure that everyone's morale was up, their well-being was up. Obviously, COVID has had an impact on everybody's mental health as well. So we really needed to check in with everybody and make sure that they were still in a good state of mind and we're still positive and still pushing forward. When it came to customers, we needed to do almost the same exact thing. We needed to make sure we were communicating more. We needed to make sure that their employees were being productive while working from home. We needed to make sure that they could be productive working from home. So all of those things are really, really big points when it came to the shift when the pandemic hit. And I think that we did a good job of communicating that with customers and checking in with customers and clients to making sure that A, they were getting productivity, B, how could they check employee productivity, right? Because that was really important. And then just to continue to push better morale, keeping everybody's spirits up, positive environments. And I think that was a test to our leadership because I think we did a fairly good job in doing that over the pandemic.
Yeah, you guys did a great job. I can only imagine the pressure that was on you from your clients to get them up and running and keep them up and running.
Yeah.
In such uncertain times, people really don't understand that from your perspective, I'm sure. So, John, I have to tell you, I'm a business lawyer, and when the economy shut down, and businesses were forced to close, I was like, oh shit, what do I do, right? And you guys have commercial tenants, and a moratorium goes on in terms of having to ability to foreclose or enforce your leases. And so what goes on at a commercial real estate company during a pandemic, and how do you guys get through it so well?
Well, again, my partners and I, we had to get really in touch with what it meant to be COVID compliant from a facility standpoint, and more importantly, just with our staff on how we operate. First, we had to convey to our staff that we weren't going to lay anybody off, or we weren't going to shut anybody out. Everybody's going to continue on. We're just going to have to do it in a different way, especially early on. But we did try to get everybody back to our headquarters earlier than most of our actually corporate tenants. But we created an environment where we locked our door, actually our front door, and we controlled passage. And we created a temperature reading and a protocol. We have our weekly disclosure forms that we all sign. So it's from the step one, we had to get our own house in order. And then we had to start looking to our facilities, and mainly engineering and air quality, creating hand sanitizing stations at every one of our locations. again, talking about product, trying to get materials, and it was a little bit of a challenge, but we try to be creative, and we were able to set up and so when people come into our buildings, they know directionally signage, they know protocol, they know how many people are in an elevator, all the things that we try to follow these daily briefings. You look at a bright, try to find a bright side from the pandemic. As I said earlier, leading up to it, we were full stride. We were able to sign some pretty crucial leases, especially in the Hauppauge marketplace, where People's United Bank, they're a $60 billion bank headquartered up in Bridgeport. They were moving out of Hauppauge. We acquired 100 Motor Parkway, and we got to the president and CEO, and we said, look, the building's going to go in a completely different trajectory, and we basically induced them or convinced them to stay. One of the bright sides is they had a 30,000 square foot facility that was built in 2004 that needed to be completely renovated. So I guess when the clouds parted and the heavens opened, and we were able to do a 30,000 square foot renovation with nobody in the building, which is incredible. And that was one of 5 renovation projects that we did from a tenant base in that building, and then we renovated the entire building. So if you go into 100 Motor Parkway right now, all new lobbies, all new technology, so from that standpoint, our buildings were quiet, and we were able to do things that we needed to get done. And now we're looking at it and anticipating a July where we start reintroducing some of these corporate clients. So we're renovating some of the cafes in the building to bring a couple of these amenities back up. So when everybody comes back to work, everything is new, and people feel good about coming back to work. Our medical properties have been we've been working around the clock. Medical facilities, as we look back in 2020, it was probably one of our busiest years from a construction standpoint, with all our various installations that we performed throughout our portfolio. So there was a silver lining to the dark clouds that were thrusted upon us in 2020. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's a great little great little story. We sort of here at my firm, we sort of had a very similar thing happen. It's March and everybody's shut down and we don't know what we're going to do. And we do some work for a major retailer, a national retailer, that had about 900 locations and 900 leases. And they basically gave us a project to renegotiate all of their leases with their landlords. And so it became this immediate, every hand on deck started digesting leases and trying to figure out what was going on. And but for that, I don't know how we made it through March and April, but sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes God just smiles on you, I guess, is how it works out. But for that, I don't know how we got through it. So that's great stuff. John, do you find, so you guys are really good partners. Do you find that there are the tenants out there were being jerks during this time, or do you find that they were really genuinely trying to find ways to work with you?
Oh, well, 100%. Everybody's faced with the same set of circumstances. What's your new reality, and how do you overcome it? Technology, like we talked about earlier, was a big factor where people could still be plugged in and not have to physically go to work. We're constantly communicating with our tenants through various text messaging platforms, email platforms, and then going through, like Ann said earlier, about what's essential and what's not. We have one company that's headquartered in Omaha, Nebraska. We just did a 25,000 square foot headquarters in our building in Islandia. It turns out that they do the technology for about 75% of the backbone for 911 emergency responders.
Wow.
So they were able to get a letter from the governor's office to say, hey, we're essential and we need to build our headquarters. So that was another 25,000 square foot renovation of an existing tenant. They came in our building at 8,000 feet. They grew to 13,000 feet, and now they're up to 25,000 square feet. And so we were able to move that process. But we try to treat every tenant in each individual situation as on the surface on what they were dealing with. Some tenants, we had to just release their leases. They just said, look, my business is completely dried up, and I can't make a go of it. Other people said, we're just going to hunker down and we'll keep you posted when we get back. Everybody, they still realize that they need a facility to eventually migrate back to. So there wasn't a lot of sudden moves, but long term, we can have another discussion about what we think is the corporate office environment going long term, because there's definitely some issues and some concerns and some trends that are definitely going to impact the workforce here on Long Island.
Yeah. Yep. And we'll definitely get to that, because that's a very interesting point. From our perspective, it was ironic. We had taken an additional 4,000 square feet. The rent commencement date was March 1st, right? And then there we were.
Yeah.
And but for PPP, again, PPP to me was a brilliant program to help make sure that that rent could get paid and lights could get turned on. So Devin, about 4 years now, you're CEO of Colca. Is that right?
Just a little bit over, yeah.
Yeah, and what an interesting time it's been. But talk about this past year and sort of how it's changed your leadership and your industry, moving now that we're moving past COVID, hopefully.
Yeah, so first talking on me and the company internally, I'm typically a lead by example person. I'm not one for many words, but I knew that during this time I needed to find those words. And so we were doing what we call daily huddles, whether that was virtually or when we got back in person, we still do daily huddles. And it was to talk about what's going on in the world right now, but even more importantly, what's going on with them as individuals and my employees as individuals. And it was good. It was almost like a group therapy session, and it was 10 minutes at max. But then more so, it was individually reaching out to every single employee and not having them talk in a group setting, because some people are reserved in that group setting, and really talking to people, because you don't know if they're dealing with the pandemic, you don't know what else they're dealing with at home. There's a lot of emotions and worries, and really reaching out to them on a one-on-one basis. And I've continued to do that since, and it's something I've learned to do. In the construction industry, it was constant calls with Empire State Development. It was constant calls with Mitch Pally over at Libby, and there was a lot of noise going on, and there was a lot of rumors going on, and it was important to dissect. Okay, what's happening? How do we go forward? At one point the industry was essential, then portions of the industry was essential. Okay, now we're allowed to work. How do we do that safely? There's times in construction where it's just impossible to socially distance. You're working with other people, and putting the right protocols in place, and really collaborating with competitors of ours, people that we don't talk to all the time, but we have a great relationship with, reaching out to them and brainstorming with them. Okay, what are you guys doing over here? We're doing this. We found that this worked. You really saw the industry come together, and the community come together, and that was nice to see.
Yeah, it is nice to see. I mean, one of the things that I noticed, particularly in the construction industry, is everybody seems like, just like John said, everybody seems to have taken this time to redo their house, redo their office, redo their buildings. And I'm glad that some municipalities have stepped up and innovated to make sure you guys can keep working, because you guys, infrastructure and construction is really what's going to have to drive recovery back here on Long Island. It's not going to be retail. It's going to be you guys. So do you see a lot of demand? Do you see that your pipeline's full right now?
We definitely see the pipeline full, and 2021 and 2022 are going to be great years. We see a lot of outside capital from outside of the region looking at Long Island and looking to invest in Long Island, and people are recognizing what a great place this is. for the talent pool, for the opportunity, and there's a lot of growth in the future for the construction industry, especially on Long Island.
That's great. That's great news. That is good to hear. Mark, so how have you been changed over this past 12 months, let's say, and how has your business and industry been changed?
Well, I'm 35 years old, so look what it's done to me. We had to quickly, of course, go to a work from home model in the office like most companies, and hats off to our IT department that made that happen relatively quickly and without too much pain and interruption. And I see that persisting even after we make a recovery from the pandemic. I think a lot of my staff like working that way, at least part of the time, and it works. So we'll probably allow it to continue in most cases. We also saw from the distribution side a big shift to an e-commerce model. So a lot of our products, more of our products were sold through e-commerce channels than in prior years. And we don't see that reverting back to the more traditional medical distribution. So even our traditional partners like a Henry Schein, I think did more of their business through their website than they did through their salespeople who were obviously not permitted to visit physician offices, hospitals, and their accounts in general. So I think the e-commerce became a very big driver of business, and in some of the lesser touch products that we sell will continue to grow. On the actual healthcare side, telemedicine is finally getting a strong foothold, and I think that will be here to stay, which means products like connected devices and wearables will become more and more important, and we're moving into that space in the years to come. On the professional side, it's already been there in the consumer side, but we're going to do it in the professional product categories to allow docs to stay connected to their patients a little more easily without having to always see them. So there's a lot of change going on.
Yeah, that's great. I want to stick with you, Mark, and we'll work backwards on this question. So workforce. So one of the things pre-COVID, right, and it was a big push that we did here at HIA-LI is a millennial workforce. It's all about culture. It's all about different things other than work. And then what I found, I'll tell you, was the biggest challenge for me as a professional services firm is all people were doing was working. There was no socializing. There was no culture. People were home and isolated. And what I find is people, especially young professionals, were really starting to rethink their life and what is it that I actually want to do with my life? And just working is boring. And it's been a really big soul-searching challenge, I think, in my industry. And I'm curious to hear from each of you about challenges that you've seen with the workforce in your industries because of COVID. So, Mark, I'll stick with you if you want to address that.
Yeah, we tried to do some things to adapt to that work from home model and keep people connected. Some were more successful than others. I think we tried a couple of happy hours. Those didn't go very well. But we set up a lot of Microsoft Teams groups for work, but I think they ultimately became sort of social venues for those departments. So the purchasing department would gather around and have not only meetings to discuss work, but just to have their own little sort of chill time. And we saw that with almost all of the discrete departments doing that. And in the plant, where they did have to be in the facility, we tried to just engage them more. I would speak to them usually twice a week or 3 times a week during the worst part of the pandemic. We had weekly lunches, safe lunches, but weekly luncheons that we bought for our staff just to keep things a little less heavy and social. And that's kind of what we try to do to keep everybody engaged and connected.
Yeah, I'll tell you, for me, we have such a culture-oriented organization here, and Q1 of last year, I was a genius. I thought that everything was going to be great, and when we got hit and that culture all shut down, it was a big impact on me. It was part of our DNA here. Devin, I'm curious how your workforce adapted, and do you see shifts in the workforce because of COVID?
So in the office during COVID, we took the time to renovate our office completely, and we didn't tell any of the employees until they came back. And once they came back, it gave that boost of morale, like, okay, I'm happy to be back here. I've been cooped up in my house in a while. And culture is everything. And we've made it a real collaborative space. Out in the field, you know, in the beginning, we struggled with workforce and some of our subs being able to provide the labor because of the employment that was still being paid out or the unemployment that was still being paid out. So that was a struggle. I think very quickly, within 2 to 3 weeks of construction opening up, the trades were able to get their labor back. But there's definitely a labor shortage coming in the future. And you see less kids getting out of high school that are learning the trades. And so the industry is going to adapt. It needs to. And I think that goes back to, you know, the industrialized means and methods of construction I mentioned previously, that it's only going to spur the growth of that because less kids are getting into the trades.
Did you find, Devin, that you had to sort of shift your management style? You know, running a construction company takes a strong personality, I'm sure, managing subs. But did you find that the frustration levels and the isolation made you have to shift the way you manage people?
We definitely were strict on the job sites. There was no warning. You know, you're wearing your mask, you're doing things the right way, you're signing in, you're getting your temperature checked. All of the procedures we put in place, there was no leeway with that. It was either get with it or we're not gonna deal with that. But on the other side of things, we had to be understanding of people's situations, and we had to communicate that with our clients. There was, you know, one time in particular where somebody on site who was working in the area of a lot of people throughout the day tested positive, and I shut the site down the next day immediately. And I had to, you know, explain to the client that this was the right thing to do. It was going to set us back, you know, 2 weeks, but we're going to recover X, Y, and Z. It was definitely a gray area in the industry of what to do in that situation. And just, we went with morally, we have to do the right thing and protect the people that are showing up every day for us.
That's great, John. So I'm curious, in your world, how you've seen the workforce sort of manage through this, and are you guys approaching your workforce differently? Do you see any future challenges in your industry with workforce because of COVID?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of moving parts and trends that are still out there that haven't really taken any strong foothold. From our immediate office, you know, we definitely practice social distancing. We checkerboarded our bullpen areas, you know, the mask protocols, and construction sites, we try to limit it to one trade at a time. So you didn't have the carpenters working with the electricians or with the plumbers. So we kind of staged it, and we kind of rolled it in a way where everybody felt like they were able to do their best to social distance, and it worked out well. You knock on wood, we were able to avoid any major shutdowns of any of our construction projects. What's interesting about, you know, because we're constantly engaging all of our tenants, and technologies, we've seen this back in let's call it the .com era, where you know, gone was the office and gone was the necktie, and so you know, the .com would really took the lead on the initiative of working, created that virtual workspace. You know, shortly that kind of fizzled out, and people came back to work. And this go around, everybody's been forced to work remotely. So there's definitely going to be more traction. What we find is we have a company in Melville it's a Los Angeles-based advertising agency, and they were always, on the cutting edge of the trend. They have, Adirondack chairs and ping pong tables and stuff like that, and they were just trying to accommodate to that millennial workforce. What they found is some of their employees actually have relocated, and they're down in the Carolinas, and they're working at their job that they get paid in Melville, but they're not living on Long Island. So that's an interesting trend. And as far as we talk about hiring people, companies are now, because it is remotely and they feel like they can get productivity out of people remotely, they're hiring people. One of our tenants is hiring people from Minnesota. They have the skill set, they have a computer, they have a Zoom, and they're hiring people outside of Long Island. The challenges that we have here on Long Island from a workforce is the same. It's the same tale that's been told for the last 20 plus years that I've been in the industry, is that if you want to work on Long Island, you have to be able to live on Long Island. And I think this pandemic is really shown the cracks and the crevices in our housing stock. And all you have to know is a young person that's looking for a home right now, there's lines to go into the open house. And there's bidding wars, and the dearth of supply and housing. And I also sit on the Suffolk County Planning Commission. I'm the town of Smithtown representative for the Planning Commission, and we look at regionally significant projects and we vote on them. Time after time after time after time, the projects that we see that come before the commission are multifamily residential, but for 55 and over. It's a shame. And that's, we know why that is. That's to placate the school districts, because you want to develop, but you don't, God forbid, you put a school-age children into a school, into these school districts that we see a rapid decline in enrollment. And despite that, they still don't want to see any what they would perceive as any development that's going to bring children into the workforce. And that's the challenge that we have on Long Island, is to bring the people that are going to be doing the living, the working, and raising a family here on Long Island, and we're failing at that across the board with giving those opportunities for people to raise their family here on Long Island.
Yeah, you bring a great point. I wasn't keyed into the school district metrics at all until recently, when the town of Smithtown, allowed mixed use inside the innovation park, meaning we can build apartments inside the innovation park. And the Hauppauge School District has brought an Article 78 against them. But the data is so overwhelmingly against the school districts. I mean, as far as dollars, and as far as the fact that the school districts are actually losing students at this point because people are leaving the districts, that the tax base can't support it. So it's interesting economics, but really, again, it's why when I started this discussion about tradable industries and why they're so important, that's one of the key points, right? Is municipalities need dollars that are coming into their regions and being spent without having to provide services for them, because those become free dollars for them. But they also need a tax base here that's going to be outpacing the costs they have. And when you look at the metrics, I think it's for every 100 apartments that are put up, it only 1.5 new students get introduced into that school district, because they're young couples usually trying to start out their career, and when they want to start a family, they typically buy a house. So we really need to focus more on those apartments and affordable housing here for our young people. It's a great point. And the shift in workforce for you guys, how has that gone and progressed?
Yeah, I would say, again, similarly to what some others have said, in the manufacturing specific, I would say the best way to describe it is sort of in parallel with what the schools were doing. So we had folks that had to be full at home because of health issues or at-risk issues, that we had to accommodate them, obviously, so that they could work full at home. Then we had folks that we kind of put a hybrid in place so that they would work at home for a period of the week, but also have to come in certain times during the week as well to make sure each department was manned, like purchasing and engineering. It was critical to have people on site. And then we had those that had to be full in person, right? Those are the folks on the floor who are actually cutting the metal, machining the metal, drilling, riveting, welding. They had to be here in person. So it was very critical for us, again, to make sure the health and welfare of people was maintained, obviously not putting anyone at risk, but then also the economic health of the company, making sure that we had enough people here at all times to keep parts manufacturing and shipping. So that was, obviously critical. And then there was a slow bringing back the folks that were at home and hybrid coming in full in person here at work, full work. So, and that is what we are now back to, fortunately. So that has been important. And of course, Joe, you and I have talked workforce and the challenge about workforce. I appreciate the comments that you brought up and as a team brought up. This is not a new issue for us to make sure that we're addressing workforce, to make sure that the economic impact of manufacturing is realized. The multiplier effect is something that we always talk about. For every $1, how much are we bringing in? Same can be said for how many manufacturing jobs one hire creates 6 jobs, so a lot of those metrics, economical metrics, are important, which is why it is important to have those young kids educated here and training here. And I have to bring up that even through COVID, Ignite and New York State and the Department of Labor has actually beefed up the apprenticeship program, the New York State apprenticeship program, because the importance of manufacturing was so vital during this COVID era. So, again, let's try and look at the good things that come out of this. The need for apprenticeship, the need for training, the need to keep young people here, the need to keep the economic dollars in this region is all, again, I hope strengthened from this. And I can't say enough about the New York State apprenticeship program that is really getting traction now in this region. So that's vital.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I am concerned. I think we were already very challenged pre-COVID to create a dynamic live, work, play culture for young workers here. And my fear is when COVID lifts and the vaccines effective and herd immunity is there, young people are going to be flocking to the Hobokens, New York Cities, and just wanting to really get back to being socialized. I mean, my daughter graduated from college in May, but she's been isolated since March, right? She's seen her friends a couple of times. They just want to go to Miami and party. Believe me, that's what they want to be doing. I don't know, they want to hang out on Long Island. So I'm very concerned, about that. And I'll share. So yesterday at our innovation task force, Town of Islip Supervisor Angie Carpenter, and I'll share it with you guys, made an impassioned plea to the business community to please be trying to help educate the constituents out there as to what reality is. Long Islanders, we all think we know it all, but we're super ignorant when it comes down to reality of where dollars need to be spent and the economic impact of how to keep our tax base down. Our taxes are super high. We understand why. See, now we're educated that the fewer the ratio of tradable sectors, the higher the tax base has to be because we're just recirculating dollars. And what we have to be taking away from these discussions is educating our workers and educating our neighbors and educating our families as to what the economic realities are, because we have a lot of challenges, I think moving forward. And so all of the input that you guys are giving is great. Let's talk about the future. So we talked about the past a little bit, Ann, and I'll stick with you. So what are the positives? What are the bright spots, right, that we've learned and that we can grow on and add on over these last 12 months?
Well, I think we've all touched on it, and unique that we all represent different aspects of the region. So collaborative, right? The importance of a collaborative effort with a common goal was brought up. Again, whether it's Devin, Matt, Mark, John, everybody, we're all understanding the value of this collaborative vision and strategic plan for Long Island. So we have to create the homes for people to live in. We have to build the buildings for people to work in. We have to make sure it's accessible and meeting the needs of the young people, and the manufacturing companies and other, strong sector driven jobs need to be advertised, and we need to go out and really brand ourselves as a viable sector to hire people. So again, I think this is the time to do it. Again, we represent, I say this over and over again, we are still such a strong manufacturing sector. And I have to get on that pedestal, over 3,000 companies, over 80,000 employees. It's such a vital sector, of which everyone on this panel supports and is part of, but sometimes we forget, right, that we're actually all working together. So utilizing, Joe, I think I'd be remiss not to mention the value of the IDAs and the economic development programs that are in place. I think the IDAs sometimes do get a bad rep sometimes on different, stories that come out, but the economic development programs are so vital. And I think there's a misperception on how money is used in those programs, but that's something that we as a team need to continue to communicate. Companies invest in this region to build those buildings, to rent those buildings, to buy capital equipment, to hire people. So I think there needs to be a really strong understanding of when a company decides to invest in this region, that the region responds and does what they need to do to make sure that we hire and buy equipment and such. And obviously, there's a ton of grants and programs out there, but we need to work together. And I know sometimes, again, with who's on this panel, you'll know, like, companies know ahead of time whether they're going to buy land, buy a building, or invest, buy equipment. They need to be in the system and getting that economic assistance from the state before they actually sign everything on that dotted line. So I think that's vital, and everyone on this panel can help in that messaging, obviously, along with AIA and Ignite and all those other organizations. We have to do it together. We have to communicate together in order to hire those young kids down the road and find them places to live. So I am positive. I think it will happen. Again, we've been able to survive and thrive during COVID, which is a testament to the people here. But now I think we just have to, get together and hold hands and figure out how to do it all together with all the different, with construction, with all the different, municipalities and government agencies. So it's got to happen, but I think it will. I think it is. So.
Yeah, look, you raise a great point. And we're very lucky. By we, I mean all of Long Island. We're very lucky to have you as one of our leading voices in the manufacturing industries. I mean, manufacturing is, all of a sudden, somehow manufacturing became the redheaded stepchild when it built the United States and built the entire Long Island economy. And now it's it's the redheaded stepchild. And I don't accept that for a second. It might not have the sizzle of technology, and Matt, I'm going to turn to you in a second, but it built this country, and it's what's going to build our recovery, because it's just no other way to do it. Matthew, technology, scary stuff has happened during COVID, right? We can push a button now and get any single thing we want from anywhere in the world, right? And never have to leave our houses. We can work anywhere in the world. Daniel Boulud is one of my favorite chefs, and I was able to pre-order a Valentine's Day dinner from Boulud Sud that includes everything from cocktails and champagne delivered right to my front door. Matthew, is this good? Is this good for society? Is this good for our psychology? Is technology becoming too much? Where are we?
So that's a good question, Joe. So I do think that it has changed, right? I think the positive parts are that, we all realize that we can be productive working remotely, right? I think we all have come to that conclusion. I think that we all have to understand that there are some risks in doing that. So we need to make sure that while we are working remotely, that we are doing it securely, which is the most important thing, right, for all of our businesses. Things like multi-factor authentication are a must nowadays. So if we are working remotely, that has to be enforced. But I think that, the other thing that we've learned is that we can use technology to be more productive as well, right? There are so many tools out there that has allowed us to kind of shift of the day-to-day manual parts of our day-to-day process and make those more automated. And it's allowing us to have those employees free up time to do other things that we may never have been able to get to. So I think those are some really, really big positives of this pandemic, is that technologies has allowed us to look at those things, whereas pre-pandemic we really were not. To answer your question, is this a good thing? Hey, look, I think it is. I love technology, and the more technology we have available to us is fantastic. But the one contradicting thing I will say is there's a lot of it, right? There's a lot of different things that you can pick. Here we are, we're on Zoom, right? You can pick Google Meets, you can pick Teams, you can pick. So there's a lot of technology to pick from. And there's a lot of SaaS offerings to pick from, right? There are thousands upon thousands of SaaS offerings that we have to make sure that from our businesses that we're picking ones that work well in our business, that have a return on our investment, and at the same time that are secure. The number of times I see a client call me up and say, hey, look, I want to implement this, and my first question is, okay, tell me why. Why are we going to do this? What's the impact it's going to have? Is there a return on it? So all of those things we have to think about. So to answer your question in a long-winded way, Joe, yes, it is positive. It is a good thing. We are all learning from this, and it is making us better as a society. We just need to make sure that we are doing it, realizing the risks that they're out there, if there are any, and that we're doing it securely.
Yeah, and I want to turn to John. So John, this is the first time we're meeting, but I can already tell I really like you. You're there in your tie and your leather chair. You seem like a handshake guy, right? You're the office-based business where people come together and talk and meet, grab a steak and a cocktail. So is technology impacting your guys' view on the commercial space? Do you think it's a good thing? Is it going to help? Is it going to hurt? How do you view this surge in technology during COVID on your industry?
Well, I think, technology, you have to embrace it. In our industry, either you change or you die. And technology is making people be more productive. The issue is our business is butts and seats. So we need people to be productive in our office environments. Although this pandemic has proven that people can be productive elsewhere. Technology, we're seeing it, like you said earlier, about getting your 5-course meal and champagne delivered to your door. One of the challenges on Long Island is that we've been so, the political will for land use and change of land use has been so, the persevere and get those entitlements, and the layers of red tape and the barriers to entry have been so steep to do any sort of real meaningful development on Long Island. Now we're seeing what some people feel may be the Trojan horse, which is these mega Amazon warehouses, whether it's the 30-year-old fight at Sarah Wire, which they've declared they finally threw their hands up, and now they're going to make that an Amazon distribution center. We're seeing it in Shirley. There's a last mile facility there. So you're seeing these strategic locations of Amazon facilities that are going to be popping up right down the spine of Long Island. And what is that going to mean for our downtowns? What is that going to mean for our local commerce? What does that mean for people getting out of their house to engage their fellow Long Islanders, where you can just click it on the phone and get it to your front door? We touch base on the residential side, but when you talk about the money multiplier, the economic development, we're a bedroom community that we're failing to deliver bedrooms. And the anemic level of residential production in the last 15 years on Long Island we're status quo. Our tax indebtedness is on a vertical curve, and we should be looking at every tax positive development in a different light as we go through this journey and provide. And this is a great platform for us to provide political cover for those people that get it. And the town of Smithtown, Pat Vecchio was served our community for a long time. We're headquartered in Smithtown, but to see the new leadership come in and take a fresh approach, and to look at how we can increase, the hot pot, that marketplace is already there. How do we make it better? Other parts of the country are doing it. You have the hotel next to the office, next to the resident, next to the restaurant. And at 5:30 at night in the Hot Pot Industrial Park, it's very quiet. There's a lot of room and a lot of runway there for us to start catering to what's going to carry us into the future. And it's about delivering housing stock. And again, if you look at a community of 3 million people, we should be building between 25 and 40,000 housing units a year. We probably deliver maybe 10% of that. And it's something that we should really be mindful of, and because we need those employees and we need that growth.
Yeah, I agree. My friend Mitch Pally always says Long Islanders put a lot of stock in their biggest asset being their house, but it doesn't mean anything if we don't have somebody to buy it from us, right? And our kids are not going to be able to afford to buy our houses. So it's a great point. Devin, the year of technology and growth, how has it shifted your industry and your outlook for the future?
So I think John hit it on the head. As a business, if you are not embracing technology, if you are not innovating, you're dead in the water. And we've seen that over the years with many big companies that have closed their doors. We, over the past 3 years, have been all in on technology. And it's not to take the place of people's jobs, but it's to help them do their jobs and give them the necessary tools to do their jobs in a more efficient manner. It's probably, in my eyes, culture and technology are the two most critical things to the growth of a company. And that helps you attract younger talent. Talent wants to go to a place where they can grow themselves, where they can challenge themselves. And when we bring somebody in for an interview and they walk into our office and see the environment and we talk about how we're conducting our business, it excites people. And there's only so much talent out there, so we're trying to do everything we can to attract that best talent. I can't say it enough. Culture and technology, two most important things to any business.
Mark, how about your world?
Well, I guess what the pandemic taught us was that we needed to do a better job with it. We had been cruising along, everything was fine. And then when the explosive growth hit, we realized that a lot of our processes and technology just weren't ready for that level of change. So we went back to the drawing board very quickly and made the necessary changes to allow us to handle the increased volume and the remote access and all the things necessary to operate in this new environment. It's also affecting, as I mentioned earlier, the whole business model of healthcare. So we're going to see more and more connected devices and more artificial intelligence doing some of the work that diagnosticians used to do, and we hope we can participate in that as well.
Yeah, medical is really interesting. I went and got a test, COVID test, and the physician was on an iPad. So the physician assistant did the swab, and then you step into a little back room and you're sort of talking to an iPad at that point, doing the checkup. So I think that's here to stay. I think Zoom like this is here to stay to a certain extent, right? It makes some meetings much more efficient. I want to give you guys the last word. We're gonna go around the horn. Last word. My only rule is it has to be optimistic, right? Last words have to be optimistic for our audience. Mark, I'll stick with you. How do you see the next few months unfolding in an optimistic way?
Well, I think, obviously, I think they're going to improve delivery of the vaccine. I think we're going to eventually get towards herd immunity. Um, and I think we're going to see the country is hungry to get back to some sense of the old normal. It may take a while for all of it to come back, but I think hospitality will come back. And I think that's an important part of our lives. And, you know, we had a good year, but it felt like a hollow year without being able to meet a friend for a drink after work and bitch and moan about what just happened at the office. And you could do some of that on Zoom, but it's not the same. So I think it's coming. It may take longer than we hope, but it'll get there. And I think we're going to be a stronger country and a stronger world for it. We'll be better prepared for the next one, for sure.
Yeah, I miss hospitality so much. I do nothing except eat and drink, right? Other than work, I just like to eat and drink. And without being able to go to my favorite restaurants, it's been very rough. Mr. Kolka, final thoughts.
Behind every valley is a peak, and we as humans have been kept inside for a long time. I believe that we will see the roaring 20s. People are going to go out. People are going to want to experience things. People are going to spend money. Travel's going to be huge. People want to get out, and we're going to see that as we distribute the vaccine more and as we get more herd immunity.
Bullish on the travel. I like that. I like that, Devin. Mr. Finn.
Well, it's definitely what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. We've been through probably the most challenging time as a region, as a country, and everybody has COVID fatigue, and with the vaccine rolling out and numbers are starting to, thank God, is decrease in the short term here on Long Island. I think people are almost recouped at a personal level to see what's important in their life and focus on things that are going to make them individuals happy. And I think as a region, I think we're going to focus on what we lack and how we can achieve those goals and getting people to buy in. I think there shouldn't be any more, there should be less sacred cows as we go forward, enable us to move forward. One of the things that just being mentioned about restaurants is I too like to go out to eat. And outdoor dining in Long Island, especially in Suffolk County, was taboo. Now every restaurant has it, albeit you might be sitting next to a car, but people have this sense that they're feeling good about eating outside. So hopefully the outdoor dining is something that will continue as a trend going forward. It's just small little positive nuance of this COVID process that we just went through.
Yeah, I'm with you, John. I hope that outdoor dining sticks, right? I love it. I was in Florida a couple of weeks ago. They've retrofitted that entire state to be outdoor everything, but the outdoor dining was spectacular down there. So I'm really hoping that the future of restaurants here on Long Island encompasses much more outdoor dining. Mr. Brown.
So I agree. I think that from the social aspect, I think it's going to open up. I think that we're going to be out more. We're going to be traveling. We're going to be doing things. We're going to be doing all of those social interactions that we all miss. And I think that's going to have a big impact on the economy too, because I think that as that happens, businesses are going to follow suit. I think that we're going to start seeing more business. I think we're going to see more projects. I think we're going to see more construction. I think we're going to see everything kind of open up. I'm real excited to what 2021 is going to bring us and going forward as well. So I'm excited. I'm jazzed up. I'm ready. So let's go do it, right?
That's what I say. That's what I say. And Ann, we'll give you the final thought.
All right. I think I started by saying Long Island is resilient. That's what COVID taught us. We're resilient. We're flexible. We respond quickly. So I like to think that we will continue doing that as Long Islanders. But actually, I think Devin mentioned in the past the noise, right? At one point, there was so much noise. And I think that's something we need to remember and focus on, and that we need to filter out noise. We need to filter out the small stuff. We need to stop saying why projects can't be done and focus more on why things can be done collaboratively, complementing each other's talents and skill sets rather than telling each other why mine's more important than yours, and that attitude that I think was prevalent during a different phase of Long Island. So again, I'm very positive, but again, there is a lot of good that come out of this. You know, the best practices that we all learn from our different industries are also vital. So collaborative effort, strong leadership, best practices, Long Island strategic plan, making sure we stick to the plan and do it together. But I have faith. I mean, we are a strong island, as you know, so I am positive.
We are, I'll tell you, it's a great point. You know, competitors came together because we all understood how important it was for our survival that we all survived, right? It didn't matter. We all came together in ways I've never seen before, and that's probably one of the strongest takeaways that I have, which was good to see. And I think that lesson on our generation. Look, our parents, they're different. Our generation of leaders, I think, have a new sense of how important collaboration with our competitors truly is for the health of the region. Terry, let's see, Miss Selly, I see you've popped back on there like I Dream of Jeannie. Impart your wisdom on us, please.
Well, listen, thank all of you. I mean, you know, from business leaders in the tradable sector, you're seeing high employment, different but substantial growth, which is what we see in those sectors. And thank you for taking a very large lemon, and continuing to make lemonade, right? And look at and creating opportunities through all of this, and absolutely collaborative opportunities. And you're continuing to give back to the economy. For our members that are on watching, please log in on April 23rd. We will be, and Joe will be moderating a panel on the Long Island Innovation Park at Hop Hog Update, where we'll be talking about a lot of what we're talking about this morning, which is mixed use, which is workforce training centers, and the growth that you'll see not only in the park, but outside the park. For those of you, when you see that growth, with that growth comes opportunities to sell your services. So I agree with everybody that we will see great stuff. We see great stuff now going on, but we will absolutely, when this is over, see some phenomenal comebacks. And again, we appreciate it. I am going to turn it over to Tony Joy. You have a few quick announcements you want to make? Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you to the panel and Joe today for moderating. I know Terry briefly mentioned already one of our upcoming programs, but just wanted to invite everybody to some of the other ones that we have coming up. So on the 26th of this month, we do have our new and prospective member information meeting. So if you are a current member or a prospective member, or want to just know a little bit more about how to get involved with the HIA, please join us for that program. And then on that same day, we have our networking and trivia with the theme of this month is Walt Disney. So if you're a Disney buff, we invite you to come have some fun with us, as well as have an opportunity just to have a casual networking opportunity to speak with some other members. And then again, we do have on March 18th, we have our 27th annual economic summit. Surveying the future of Long Island business. So again, we'll have a really great dynamic panel and just looking at kind of the forecast opinion poll survey of Long Island. So we invite you to join us for that. Definitely continue to check back on our HIA-LI event calendar to learn more about some of the other upcoming events. And with that, just want to again thank the panel, thank Joe, and thank you all for joining us today for the program. And I hope everyone has a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.